After I started dating Calvin, he was always busy playing basketball, racing cars, and chatting with his junior high school friend. He stood me up numerous times for our dates. It was always his brother who took away the gifts I had prepared for him. I'm sorry, Melody, my brother had something come up, so I'm here to represent him, his brother said as he wrapped a tie around my wrist in circles. Why don't I take over for him tonight? I tie a better bow than he does, and I think you'll like it. Early the next morning, Calvin stood outside my bedroom door, his eyes red with frustration. Melody, come out and talk to me, he pleaded. His brother closed the door behind him, sounding cold. That's rude. Your sister-in-law was tired from last night, let her rest. On our 300-day anniversary of being in a relationship, Calvin flaked on me again. I waited for him for 2 hours with a cake I had baked myself. It wasn't until evening that he finally answered the phone. Melody, sorry, it's loud over here. What's up? He asked. I'm downstairs at your place. What are you doing at my place? The animal-shaped icing on the cake had started to melt a bit, emitting a sweet aroma through the paper bag. I stared at it for a couple of seconds and then said, today is our anniversary. You mentioned it last Tuesday. You might have forgotten. I'm busy today, test driving cars with friends in the suburbs. No time to be with you. In what seemed like an attempt to match his words, a familiar female voice came from the background. Calvin, everyone is ready. We're just waiting for you. Are you afraid of losing? That's why you're hesitant to come. It was his close friend from elementary school, Bertie. Afraid of losing? The voice from the other end sounded a bit distant, as if deliberately moving the phone away. Calvin impatiently clicked his tongue and replied, the ones who should be worried about losing are you guys. Just wait, I'm coming. When his voice returned, it was softer and gentler. I can't come back now. So why don't you head back to school first? If I win, I'll bring you a gift when I come back. As the sun set and its rays turned into flames, making my hand holding the phone tighten involuntarily, I realized I had also brought a gift for him. But I really couldn't go back. Melody, please behave and don't make it difficult for me, okay? His voice had a hint of urgency and impatience. Just forget about it. A sentence lingered in my throat. Before I could say it, the call disconnected. The screen went dark for a few seconds and then lit up again, with Brian's name flashing on the caller ID. Melody, wait for me for 10 minutes. I'll be there soon. His deep voice carried a hint of seriousness. I instinctively straightened my back. It's too much trouble for you. It's not a valuable gift. I'll take it back myself. No problem. I'm in the area on business. It's on my way. A black Rolls-Royce stopped in front of me as the evening light bathed us in its glow. The car door opened and Brian, with his tall figure and sharp features, stepped out. From a slightly upward angle, his face looked even more noble and refined. He stood upright in front of me and said, sorry, Melody. My brother is busy today, so I'm here to represent him. The melted icing had stained a dark spot on the paper bag. I handed him the cake, feeling a bit embarrassed. It's my first time baking a cake. It may not be that great. Feel free to throw it away if it's too much trouble. He squinted. Isn't this a gift for Calvin? Handing over a gift that wasn't given in person during a date had lost its original meaning. I shook my head. He's very picky. He might not even like it, but I really do. The words didn't sound like something a legendary, aloof businessman would say. As I looked at him in surprise, he quickly added, I've always had a sweet tooth, Melody, let's get in the car. I waved my hand. I can go back to school on my own. You don't have to drive me. He smiled, his tone warm and composed. Not back to school. There's a business dinner tonight, hosted by our family. Calvin will be back later. Perhaps, Melody, you'd like to see him. After getting in the car, I reached for the seatbelt next to me, but it wouldn't come loose. Instead, it tightened as I pulled on it. In the next moment, a strong scent of bitter herbs filled my nostrils. It's okay, let me help, Brian said. He leaned over to untangle the seatbelt and secured it for me. Our arms touched, our knees bumped against each other, and his slightly elevated body temperature transferred through the thin fabric of our clothes, causing me to instinctively lean back. I'm sorry, he gazed into my eyes. Did I offend you? I quickly shook my head. In fact, I wasn't very familiar with Brian. After my mother remarried and I moved to the current house, the kids in the entire villa area looked down on me. Look, she doesn't even know how to use cutlery. Oh my, she actually drank the lemon water meant for rinsing after meals. I thought that was just a joke. A girl from the countryside, what does she know? For a long time, Calvin was my only playmate. When my mother punished me by not allowing me to eat, because she wanted to please her new husband and stepdaughter, Calvin would take me to his house, open his fully stocked snack cabinet, and let me pick. Occasionally, I would run into Brian, who would look at us with indifference and then turn away without showing any emotion. He was 5 years older than me, Calvin's brother. Due to favoritism from their parents, the brothers were not close when they were young, but as they grew older, their relationship improved. After Calvin returned to the country and we started dating, he was always busy playing basketball, racing cars, and chatting with his elementary school friend. His life was so rich, he often forgot about our pre-arranged dates. During those times, it was always his brother Brian who came to take the gifts I had prepared. Due to not being very familiar with each other, Brian always politely referred to me as Miss Melody. Except for the last time that Calvin and I celebrated Valentine's Day. He had to leave in the middle of dinner and asked Brian to drive me back to school. But that night, Brian had just come from a drinking party, and he was drunk. As the driver drove, I sat beside a drunk Brian on the back seat. The driver said, "Melody, Brian had a bit too much to drink, so he might not feel well. Can you take care of him for me?" I quickly nodded and turned to carefully observe Brian's expression. There was a slight redness in the corners of his eyes from the alcohol, and his voice was a bit hoarse. "I just need some water." I quickly handed him the water bottle in my hand, but after he took it, I suddenly remembered that I had taken a sip from it at the restaurant, just before giving it to him. "Wait, let me go get a new one. I drank from this one." Brian, seemingly unaware, pressed his perfect lips to the bottle and swallowed a few times, then looked at me. "Melody, what did you say?" "Nothing." I hesitated for 2 seconds, then realized, "What should I call you?" "Calvin always calls you that," he said, looking into my eyes. "I'm his brother, so in a way, I'm like your brother too, right Melody?" "We're here." Brian's voice brought me back from my wandering thoughts. I followed him into the splendid ballroom. The light from the crystal chandelier was so bright, it was almost blinding. "I have something to attend to, so you stay here," Brian said, looking at me. "If you're hungry, you can go grab something to eat first." "It's okay, you're busy. Just focus on your work. Don't worry about me." He gave me a deep look. "I'll be back soon, Melody." The sudden shift to a more intimate address left me stunned for a moment. By the time I regained my composure, Shirley was standing next to me. We were nominally sisters, but there was no blood relationship between us. She had always despised me to the extreme. She came with a few friends, sneering at me. "You, a poor girl like you, how dare you show up here? It's no concern of yours. Your presence here is just embarrassing me." She looked at me disdainfully and added, "Hasn't Calvin dumped you yet?" I took a deep breath and looked at her. "It's my own business. You don't need to worry about it. And I've already moved out. I'm not part of your family anymore." Her eyes flashed with irritation, and she reached out to grab me. I took a step back to avoid her, but she caught my collar and pulled off my brooch. "Serves you right," she sneered, then turned and walked away. I picked up the brooch and walked to the empty garden to fix my dress. While adjusting it, I thought back to several years ago, the first time I attended a banquet. My belt's bow came undone, and I couldn't tie it right, ending up creating a knot. Calvin had taken me to an empty dressing room upstairs, carefully untied it for me, and tied it back properly. I tried hard to turn my head to see how he did it. Just as he finished tying it, our eyes met at a very close range. For a quiet moment, our breaths intertwined and spread silently through the air. The next second, Calvin leaned in for a kiss. It was our first kiss. "Melody." Brian found me while I was still struggling with the brooch. I was sweating in frustration. The gap on the evening gown was too small, so the button needed to be fully extended and inserted at a 90-degree angle from the other end. "Sorry, I'll be quick." He glanced over, quickly understanding what was going on. "Let me help you button up properly. Your wrist is bent in a reverse angle. You can't use force like that." The warm fingertips paused on my chest, transmitting body heat through the thin fabric of the dress. In fact, the whole process only lasted for a few seconds, and Brian looked serious and focused, seemingly without any ambiguity. But my earlobes were still burning red. "Is it done?" I asked. I sighed in relief and was about to thank him when suddenly Calvin's voice interrupted. He was standing not far from me, with a cold and sharp tone in his voice I had never heard before. "What are you two doing?" Before I could reply, Calvin strode over, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me behind him. Brian withdrew his hand and casually slipped it into his pocket. Looking at Calvin, Melody's brooch was loose. I was just fixing it for her. Calvin took a deep breath, smirking. "I'm here now. Let me take over as her proper boyfriend." Brian said nothing. His gaze moved past Calvin's shoulder and landed on my face as if intertwining threads, subtly revealing a hint of hidden grievance. "Are you proclaiming your sovereignty over me now?" Brian finally spoke after a moment, his tone indifferent. "Don't forget, you were the one who asked me to come over and pick her up in the first place." Calvin was momentarily speechless, just instinctively squeezing my wrist tighter. I winced in pain and tried to pull my hand back, but he held on even tighter. Let go. Brian's face turned serious. Can't you see you're hurting her? Calvin looked at him coldly with disgust. This is between me and my girlfriend. None of your business, Brian. You're still the same as when we were kids. Always wanting to interfere with what's mine. But what's the use? Back in the day, my parents only favored me, and now Melody will only be my girlfriend. After saying this, he tightly held my wrist and led me through the courtyard. It wasn't until we sat in the car parked outside that he finally released my hand. But he was still very close, staring directly into my eyes. You said you prepared a gift for me. Where is it? I remained silent for a moment, then replied, threw it away. Are you mad at me, Melody? He impatiently fiddled with his hair. I forgot we had a date today, my bad. But I was at the racetrack at the time, with my buddies. I couldn't just leave them. I even got injured trying to win you that first place prize. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing his forearm with two side-by-side strawberry-shaped bandages, slightly blooded at the edges. It was Bertie's favorite style. Long ago, Calvin wasn't like this. He was only a year older than me, and we went to school together. As a 17-18-year-old youth, his possessiveness was very strong, and his way of expressing love was straightforward and passionate. He would refuse even when girls passed him love letters in school, smiling and saying, sorry, I already have someone I really like. He would also come to my house when Shirley messed up a dress he gave me, to demand compensation for me. Shirley ruined what I gave you. What? Are you planning to cut ties with our family over this? In the end, Shirley was forced to apologize to me. Later, the school organized a basketball game, and as I was heading to study hall, he stopped me. Calvin forcefully handed me a bottle of water and in a tone that brooked no argument, said, come watch my game this afternoon, and remember to bring me water at the sidelines. Under my gaze, the teenage Calvin blushed slightly. They all have girlfriends bringing them drinks. I was jealous. Is that not allowed? It wasn't until he graduated high school, and was sent abroad by his family to study at university, that I found an opportunity to fly overseas and spend Christmas with him. When Calvin came to pick me up at the airport, he was accompanied by a tall, slender girl in a camel coat. She smiled and casually looked me up and down for a moment before extending a hand. Hi, I'm Calvin's junior sister, Bertie. We're both Chinese international students here, unfamiliar with the place, but thankfully we have each other to look out for. After graduation, Bertie naturally returned to the country with him. And now, I came to my senses, only to meet Calvin's pitiful, almost pleading gaze. The bandages had become soaked in blood. Let's change them. I hesitated and then asked him, wasn't there a gift for me as a result of winning? Calvin proudly handed me a gift box. When I opened it, there lay a sparkling blue diamond bracelet inside. A special prize for you to win. Bertie asked me for it, but I didn't give it to her. He leaned over, cautiously trying to help me put on the bracelet, but he missed the clasp, and it slipped off my wrist. I quickly bent down to pick it up, fingers searching under the car seat, aided by the dim light. I found a discarded lipstick. Melody, did you find it? I replied, holding the bracelet tightly in my palm and standing up straight. Suddenly, the light in front of me dimmed. My lips were covered by a warm force. Calvin held me by the shoulders, kissing me deeply, his voice hoarse and murmuring, don't mind Brian. His unchangeable, full of bad intentions. Melody, I will accompany you well. In the following days, Calvin no longer went out with his group of friends. It seemed like he was trying to make up for missing our appointment that day, as he started spending every day with me, helping with resume submissions, preparing for interviews, doing freelance translation work, and taking care of the plants on the balcony. Calvin was puzzled by this. Why are you working so hard at job interviews? I can just tell my dad, and he can arrange a position for you at the company directly. The pen paused on the paper. I looked up. I already have offers from 2 companies where I interned before. I just want to compare them and decide. No need to trouble your uncle. Backed by his family's business and lavished with unconditional love from his parents, Calvin could do as he pleased, never worrying about his livelihood. I could sense that, to him, this busy and mundane life quickly became tiresome. One evening, Calvin went out for a call. When he returned, he mentioned he had to go out to buy things for me. I'll be back soon, with some late-night snacks for you. You've been working so hard with your side job, you've gotten thinner. I fell silent for a few seconds, staring at his slightly evasive eyes. Okay. After Calvin left, I continued working at the desk. Suddenly, my phone lit up. It was a friend request from Brian. His note read, the cake was delicious. I hesitated for a moment, then accepted his friend request. Sorry, Brian. He almost instantly replied, I think under any circumstances, you shouldn't be the one apologizing. I hesitated, not knowing what to reply. His message came again quickly, The day you gave me the cake was my birthday. I was stunned. A memory from years ago surfaced in my mind. The grand celebration for Calvin's birthday. Brian hadn't shown up that day. Curious, I asked a question. Why wasn't your brother there? Maybe he was in a bad mood. My family never celebrates my brother's birthday anyway. When I snapped out of it, I typed a dry happy birthday and sent it over. Thanks, he replied. Thank you for your wishes, I'm happy. I wonder if I'll have the privilege to taste your cake again. Before I could respond, a text message from an unknown number popped up on my phone. Come to Nightfall Bar, pick up Calvin, he's had too much to drink. On a summer night, even the wind outside carried a hint of heat. Following the instructions from the number, I found my way to a quieter part of the bar on the 3rd floor. Just as I was about to push open the door to the private room, I heard a familiar voice. When are you planning to break up with her? The crack in the partially closed door revealed a beam of light, and I conveniently hid in the shadow of the dim corridor. When did I say I was breaking up with her? Calvin's voice was stern. Melody is different from you. Who else would love her besides me? Then what am I to you now? If you truly love her, you wouldn't have gone abroad for half a year and slept with me, saying my figure is good. Not like some girls who are as skinny as monkeys. Weren't you talking about her? The smell of tobacco being lit wafted through. A strong feeling of nausea suddenly rose in my throat. I turned around and quickly found a waitress, asking for 2 bottles of wine. The cold liquid rolled down my throat, calming the emotional turmoil for a moment. But then a new wave of dizziness washed over me. I stumbled into the restroom at the end of the hallway. Turning on the faucet, I splashed a few handfuls of cold water on my face. Amid the buzzing in my ears, Brian's voice suddenly sounded. Somewhat surprised, he said, Melody. I looked up. In the mirror, I met his eyes. He quickly added, this is the men's restroom. Sorry, I walked into the wrong one. I rubbed my burning ears and stood up, walking towards the door. As we passed by each other, he lightly held my wrist. Don't go out now. There are scenes outside you wouldn't want to witness. This was my first time at Brian's house. When he helped me sit on the couch, the alcohol had clouded my mind. I'm sorry. I apologized sluggishly. I haven't drunk before. No need to apologize. As I said before, under any circumstances, you shouldn't be the one apologizing. Brian loosened his tie slightly and said somewhat audaciously, I've always been curious. Why do you like Calvin? Countless fragmented images flashed through my mind, memories and intoxication, blending into a tangled mess. I thought of the snacks Calvin handed me when I was hungry, the ridicule I faced when I couldn't properly wear a suit at 15 or 16. I thought of the bow tie he carefully tied and adjusted for me. I thought of the damp, dimly lit cloakroom where we had our first kiss. But in the end, all I could utter was, because he ties the bow tie so beautifully. The affection he once showed me was so sincere and passionate. But it all changed in the end. Suddenly, the light in front of me dimmed. I looked up and realized that Brian had somehow appeared in front of me, looking down on me. Over the past year, every time he stood me up, he always had me handle things for him, taking your gifts, driving you home. Was it inevitable that I wouldn't do anything? As Brian spoke, he slowly bent down, saying, how about I take over tonight? Melody, my bow ties are even more beautiful than his, you'll like it. His breath grazed my ear, hot and tingling. Without me realizing, his tie had been completely undone and wrapped around my wrists, binding my hands together and pressing them against my head. Do you remember, Melody, this is the tie you gave me. His voice was low and hoarse, and his moist kisses traveled down from my ear. He doesn't cherish it. Someone else will take care of it for him. Brian's breath grew hotter, carrying a seductive hint. Melody, would you refuse me? Melody is not alone. Besides Calvin, look at me. I will love you well, Brian said, smiling. The living room had only one dim lamp lit. The moonlight trickled in through the half-opened curtains, blending with the lamplight, just like Brian and I were blending together. Be good, relax, don't be so nervous. You're so beautiful, Melody. So beautiful, he said as he ran his hand through my tousled hair on my cheek, caressing and leaving delicate kisses. Moving along the curves of my body, Brian breathed heavily, whispering, I want to taste, may I? As the night grew deeper, the air in the villa became even more sultry. Eventually, I couldn't speak in complete sentences anymore, only holding onto Brian's shoulders, as he led me into a tumultuous wave of passion. His kisses swallowed all the fragmented voices, even at the moment we reached the climax. When I woke up, it was already bright outside. I was surrounded by softness, and Brian was nowhere to be seen. It took me a few seconds to realize that I was lying in an unfamiliar bed, probably in Brian's bedroom. As the memories of last night flooded my mind, I couldn't help but cry out in broken pieces. Brian held my face, saying, if it were me that night, I probably wouldn't have tied a bow tie for you. Melody, I would have taken you away directly. I snapped back to reality, took a deep breath, and despite feeling sore, got out of bed and walked to the doorway. As I opened the door just a crack, I saw Calvin and Brian facing each other at the staircase a few steps away. Calvin, with redness in his eyes and a desperate voice, said, "I knew it. I knew it. Let Melody come out and see me. Melody, come out and see me." Impolitely, Brian did not acknowledge him, just earnestly folding the crumpled tie in his hands. In a cold tone, he said, "Your sister-in-law had a rough night. Let her rest properly." Calvin froze in place, as if his soul had been hollowed out in an instant. After a moment, his emotion switched to intense hatred. He looked at Brian and said, "Brian, only Melody would believe in your sincerity. When our parents favored me and you nearly died from a fever at the sea, did you dare to put her in bed with you to retaliate against me?" Standing silently behind the closed door, I stood in the room. Calvin's words pierced through my ears like sudden thunder. But that feeling of helplessness, like being in the middle of a vast ocean, lasted only a moment. I quickly regained my composure, rubbed my eyes, put on a perfect freshly awakened face, and pushed the door to step outside. The two men outside almost turned their heads simultaneously. Brian's panicked expression quickly disappeared upon realizing that I showed no signs of distress, returning to the same tender affection from last night. He said, "You're awake, Melody. Are you tired from last night?" Calvin's eyes reddened further. He took a step forward, and I instinctively took a step back. Calvin's face turned ashen as he said with anguish, "Melody, don't be fooled by him. Brian is not what he seems. Melody, don't believe him." Brian suddenly chuckled. Walking over, he affectionately tidied my disheveled hair, and adjusted my rumpled nightgown. Calvin was becoming visibly agitated, taking 2 steps forward and raising his voice, "Melody, don't be deceived by him. Brian is not." Before Calvin could finish, Brian swiftly turned around and landed a punch on his jaw. Calvin, caught off guard, stumbled back a few steps and slid down the wall, ending up sitting on the floor. Brian showed no mercy, while Calvin fought back. In the end, both of them ended up in the hospital to treat their wounds. Brian's injuries were minor, and after tending to the scratches on his hand and cheek, only a slight bruise appeared at the corner of his eye. Standing in the hallway, Brian calmly instructed his secretary, "Let my parents enjoy their vacation abroad. Today's incident shouldn't disturb them." "Understood, Brian." The secretary nodded slightly before leaving. I looked up at Brian as he walked towards me, naturally taking a seat next to me. He softly called my name, Melody. I handed him the wristwatch, saying, "Mr. Brian, here you go." He pursed his lips slightly, looking somewhat resigned. "What do you call me?" he asked, noticing that I reverted back to the previous form of address after changing it the night before. Some images from last night suddenly flooded my mind. The moonlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, tears streaming down my face as I tightened the fluttering curtains. Brian gently pried my clenched teeth apart with his fingertips, coaxing softly, "Don't bite yourself." Uncomfortable. Compared to this, changing a name isn't that difficult, isn't it, Melody? Feeling like a piece of driftwood in the vast sea, I could do nothing but cling to him, and as I opened my mouth, my voice shook uncontrollably. "Brother." Almost instantly after uttering that name, I was engulfed in an intense wave of pleasure. Once I came to, snippets of memories from last night turned my ears and neck red. However, my heart remained as still as a frozen lake. Brian stared into my eyes earnestly, saying, "Melody, I love you. Calvin doesn't know how to cherish you. You deserve a better choice." He paused briefly, taking my hand and pressing it against his chest. The warmth of my palm against his skin revealed a heart beating vigorously beneath. "I will give you my unconditional love." In your world, the word love is so easily spoken, even if it's deceitful, even if it's a lie. Brian, I swallowed the overwhelming emotions, snatched my hand back, and prepared to speak. Suddenly, the door to the examination room swung open. The nurse came out looking exasperated. "Melody, Calvin's in there complaining of pain. If you're not with him, we can't treat his wounds." Turning my head, Brian seized my hand. "Let him suffer then," he coldly said. "He's the one at fault, the one who cheated. Does he have the right to be pitied now?" The nurse turned and went back inside, closing the door behind her. "Melody," Brian softly said, "did you hear what Calvin said?" As the evening approached, the dense golden sunlight streamed in from the window, fragmented by the half-open window frame. The shattered light and shadows reflected on the floor, resembling pinned-down butterflies. I turned my head and looked at him in confusion. "What?" Brian stared into my eyes, then shook his head slightly after a moment. "Nothing." "Melody, why don't you move in with me?" Sitting in Brian's car, the familiar bitter scent mixed with the hospital disinfectant filled the air, enveloping me warmly. I gathered my thoughts and said, I still have some part-time work to finish. Can you drop me off at my rented house first? He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Okay. I leaned back in the car seat, and fatigue quickly escalated into drowsiness. As I closed my eyes, memories from the past emerged like bubbles. I was very young when my parents divorced. My custody was granted to my mother, but she didn't want me. So, she sent me to live with my aunt in the countryside. My aunt was old, with poor eyesight and mobility. Essentially, I had to take care of myself. My mother said getting an award or scoring full marks would add a point to one's heart. She promised to come see me when the points reached 100. I believed her and patiently added points to my heart. But on the day I reached 100 points, she still didn't come back. I held a coin in my hand and dialed her number from the village store. Just as the call was about to hang up automatically, she answered. Who is this? I clenched the phone cord, my heart suddenly pounding. After hesitating for a while, I could only muster a sentence. Mom, I've saved up 100 points. Silence lingered on the other end of the phone, and her voice ignited abruptly. Just got married, and you're already pressuring me to take you in. Are you being too calculating, child? The phone hung up as abruptly as her anger. I stood rooted to the spot, until the shop owner came over and patted my shoulder. 2 cents. I handed over the coin in my hand. In a hallucination, in that unseen world, the bright red 100 points dropped down a notch and became 99. From that day on, it transformed into the score representing my mother in my heart. Later on, my aunt passed away. Due to a prank played by a neighbor's child, I was locked in the room with her body for 3 days. My mother finally had to take me in. I became quiet, rarely speaking. It felt like all the voices in my life had been spent in those 3 days of screaming and banging on the door, draining me completely beforehand. Shirley would tease me as mute at the dinner table. My mother would laugh along, then drag me into the storeroom, squeezing my face and asking, Melody, can't you just not cause chaos for me? Gloomy, like a lunatic, do I owe you that? She didn't hold back, and the intense pain gave way to numbness afterward. Throughout it all, I didn't utter a word. I just stared into her eyes in the dim light. Mother, every time you make me sad, I deduct 1 point. When it reaches 0, we won't have to see each other again. Then came Calvin. My love and expectations for him didn't vanish in an instant, but eroded gradually over time, until it reached a point where we had to part ways. At the moment, when I overheard his conversation with Bertie outside the booth, all the numbers reset to 0. I thought, I didn't misjudge him. And now, with Brian, it was the same. 60 points. In a half-awake state, I murmured incomprehensibly. Then my lips were kissed. His tongue swept past my teeth, silencing all sounds and breaths forcefully. Instinctively, I tried to take a deep breath, but his lips and tongue burrowed deeper, leaving me no choice but to swallow helplessly. I shivered, and my foggy mind quickly cleared. Melody. Brian stepped back a bit, pressing his forehead against mine, breathing heavily. What's this 60 points about? It's nothing, I composed myself, shaking my head. I just dreamed about some childhood memories, about only passing an exam. He stayed silent, cradling my face, his warm breath melting with mine. After a moment, he sighed faintly. Let's go, I'll help you pack your things. Actually, I didn't have much luggage. Some books, an old computer I used for part-time work, and a few clothes I bought for myself. All the miscellaneous stuff Calvin gave me was left behind here. While folding clothes, I noticed Brian sitting in the living room, going through my paper resume placed on the table. Near perfect grades and a full scholarship. Melody, have you ever thought about applying to our company? He inquired, handing me the clothes. It's not convenient, I replied. He seemed to understand what I was thinking. Now that you and Calvin are apart, you don't need to worry about others saying you got in through connections. I looked at him, silent. Brian quickly caught on, smiling with his eyes downcast. It's me. I'm not like him, Melody. I always handle things professionally. As he said that, he walked towards me. Through the soft clothes, he enveloped me in a hug. But you can think this way. I'm happy. Yes, now I'm the one with you. I finally showed myself to you, Melody. And that's how I moved into Brian's house. He no longer lived in the family villa, so now this house was occupied by him alone. On the first day of moving in, Brian specifically instructed the housekeeper not to let Calvin in if he ever came over. Seeing me looking up at him with a curious expression, he reached out and ruffled my hair. Then he tied an apron around his waist. Melody, what would you like to eat? I'll cook tonight. Consider it my gift for your birthday. I opened my mouth and hesitantly said, that cake. I didn't do a good job. No, Brian shook his head. You did very well, Melody. Many nights later, under the moonlight, my dripping sweat fell onto him, guided patiently and meticulously by him, exploring the rhythms of ebb and flow. When the tide engulfed everything, I trembled, lying exhausted on him. With his palm against the back of my head, gently massaging my wet hair, he repeated that sentence many times. The Brian from before, for me, was like a fuzzy and distant image composed of several symbols. A domineering leader like Calvin's brother, callous and decisive. 4 years ago, through a long and meticulous plan, he gradually led his family company into a crisis. His parents were eventually forced to relinquish over half of the company's shares. In all the times we met, I was actually a bit afraid of him. But now, his image was becoming clearer and more concrete in my mind with every passing moment. In just a fleeting moment, June arrived. "Let me take you to the graduation ceremony tomorrow," Brian said, pouring me a glass of orange juice at the dining table and speaking up. It was at that moment his parents barged in. Behind them, a cold and sharp-looking Calvin followed suit. "Mr. Brian, I didn't stop him," I said. "It's okay, you should leave first." His uncle's expression turned grim. "You replaced all the old servants in the group." He chuckled lightly, sticking to old ways, taking up space without doing anything, just focused on raking in money and stuffing people into the company. Shouldn't they be replaced? "Brian, I'm still alive. The company is not solely yours. You're being too audacious." Brian seemed unfazed by his father's scolding. He casually cut a piece of bread, spread butter carefully on it, and handed it to me. "Melody, eat first." The bread was abruptly slapped out of the air. The housekeeper pointed at him, venting her anger. How dare you lay a hand on your brother, sending him to the hospital and then the police station." It was just minor injuries, crying to go to the hospital, wanting pity and sympathy. "Unfortunately, he made a mistake first. The victim doesn't buy into this act." Brian rolled up his sleeves, stood up, and as for going to the police station, driving under the influence, shouldn't he go to wake up sober? "If we wait until he hits someone, commits an unforgivable crime, will you then visit him in jail?" The housekeeper delivered a strong slap to his face. "Calvin is only 23 and you hate him so much. If you didn't lure away his girlfriend, how would he heartbrokenly go drink and end up drinking too much to drive back home alone?" "Brian, how can you be so wicked? You were already carrying twin sons in my womb. You had one of them killed, for so many years. Your mind is evil, plotting to take over the entire family. Why didn't you just die in the sea back then?" I lifted my head suddenly, looking at Brian. He stood there against the light, half of his face sunken in the shadow. The contrast between light and shadow divided his face, showcasing an extreme fragility. Silence lingered and rolled around for just a few seconds. Then Brian, pressing his face, slowly smiled. "True, why didn't I die in the sea? Or even earlier, die in your womb, as you always wished?" Tall and towering, he stood tall, towering over Aunt Pei by more than a head's length. Looking down at her, there was a kind of haughty arrogance. "But unfortunately, I'm still alive now, better off than your 2 sons who died earlier than me." Auntie's chest heaved with anger, and Calvin quickly stepped forward to support her. Then he turned to me. "Melody, don't be fooled by him. I know I made mistakes before, but I will change. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, always loving you. You don't know, Brian has always hated me, hated everyone in our family. He was out for revenge from the beginning." "I know," I interrupted him. My voice was soft, but it carried a powerful force, hitting the space like thunder, silencing even the faintest of sounds. Brian suddenly looked at me. I tightened my grip on the glass of orange juice in my hand. "I heard everything you two were saying outside the door that day. I'm not as clueless or foolish as you think. It's not that hard to figure out. He despises you, despises us all so much that even controlling the entire company isn't enough for him. He wanted to use the same tactics on an emotional level. Losing something that was originally yours to someone else, that must make you feel embarrassed and ashamed, right?" Calvin stared at me dumbfounded. "Melody, but it's all right." I took a deep breath, stood up, because this is what I wanted, or rather, I've always wanted to do this to my family, but never had the chance. "Calvin, you're the one who cheated. The one who wanted to deceive both sides. I wanted to be with you from the beginning. It's you who destroyed everything. There's no one else to blame. I won't fall for you again. We're over." I had never expressed my disgust towards my family so clearly in front of Calvin before, or maybe I had. He just always ignored it. In Calvin's eyes, I should always remain as naive and incapable as I was at 16, waiting for him to rescue me with his overflowing love. "Brian," I hesitated slightly, turning towards Brian. The light filtered through the window fell between us, the wind gently blowing, causing the wind chimes to sway, as if a butterfly about to take flight. "Do you remember the time you saved me? I wonder if that's enough to repay you," I said. "I didn't invest in your company, because I had never planned to stay here from the beginning. I already have a suitable offer lined up, and after the graduation ceremony tomorrow, I'll be heading to work in California. Brian didn't immediately respond. He took a step forward, crossing the shadow cast by the backlight. Standing in the light, his beautiful eyes displayed intense emotions. It was as if the birth and collapse of a star in the universe were accelerated a million times, his eyes almost dimming in an instant. I bowed slightly, went upstairs to drag my suitcase. When I came back down, Brian finally spoke. A 60, that's the score you gave me, right? I turned around. Melody, I'm just like you, but she refused to believe me. You don't trust me. His last sentence almost carried a tone of pleading vulnerability and pain. But I didn't stop. Just like 3 years ago, when I left that house at night with 2 plastic bags, I never stopped. This time no one scored a 0. It's just that I finally prepared everything thoroughly to leave the past behind. 3 years ago, during that winter, I was called back home by my mother under the pretext of illness, only to find out they had arranged a marriage for me. Now that Calvin's family was in power, not to mention the familiar old retainers, even the elders couldn't have a say with him. Shirley's father took a deep drag of his cigarette, saying our company's old ways wouldn't work with him, and he wanted to terminate the cooperation. So, they chose an investor with abundant funds. They were planning to marry me off to him to help the company out of its difficulties. Shirley looked at me maliciously. Country girl, you've been eating at my house for so many years. It's time for you to repay. Besides, he's not that old and has money. It's better than you staying in the countryside and marrying a farmer, right? You should be grateful to us. My mother smiled apologetically beside me. Yes, let's say our Melody is blessed. Marrying him will make her a direct lady. She nudged me with her elbow. Melody, go and thank your uncle. I turned to look at her. The scoreboard in my heart finally reset to 0 at that moment. The bright red numbers, like a countdown timer to the explosive finale in a movie. I looked at her and said clearly, no, I won't thank you. And I won't get married. If you think it's a good match, then let Shirley go instead. The people present were instantly furious. They ordered the servants to restrain me, intending to tie me up and send me directly to that family. Shirley's father's phone rang at that moment. He answered the call, his expression gradually becoming strange. A few minutes later, the call ended. The rough rope had already bound my wrists and ankles, but he suddenly seemed to change his mind. All right, since the child is unwilling, we'll let it go, he said, looking at me with a smile. Brian called. Considering the many years of cooperation from before, we can collaborate on 2 more projects. Melody, I heard your relationship with Calvin has always been good. Is this his consent? My servants let go of me. I bit my lip, silent, untied the bound ropes, and shook them off. My mother was slightly displeased. You child, your uncle is talking to you. Why aren't you responding? I stood up, went upstairs without saying a word. My room was at the end of the corridor. A storage room converted into a bedroom, narrow and small, empty. I took out 2 plastic bags, threw in the few pieces of clothing I had, and carried them downstairs. My mother screamed, coming to tear at me. Melody, are you going too far? She grabbed my hand. Melody, why aren't you speaking? Why are you so silent? I shook her off, staring into her eyes, saying each word calmly. Because you and this whole family make me sick. If I say another word, I'll throw up. That night the moon shone brightly. I walked through the quiet streets of the Villa district carrying my worn plastic bags. I took out my phone, wanting to ask Calvin if he had helped. But when I opened message, I saw his recent post. It was at a dimly lit bar. Anyone up for a drink? I refreshed the page, and the post was gone. I stared at his profile picture for 3 seconds, exited messages, and shoved the phone back into my pocket. The next day he suddenly contacted me. Melody, the passport and visa are all arranged. You've always said you were busy. Can you come and spend Christmas with me this year? If you don't have money for the plane ticket, I'll pay for it. I stayed quiet for 2 seconds, then said, okay. I smoothly attended the graduation ceremony. After speaking as the outstanding student representative, I descended the stage. A classmate handed me a large bouquet of white roses. Melody, these flowers were anonymously sent to you. There's no card, no signature, but I remember. 3 days ago at night, I sat on the terrace with Brian as the summer night breeze gently blew. He ran his fingers through my slightly damp hair, saying, Melody, aren't you giving a speech as the outstanding student representative on graduation day? Can I, as an outstanding student representative admirer, come up and give you these flowers when you're off the stage? I closed my eyes somewhat tiredly. Maybe that would be too ostentatious. Wait until you come down, then give them to me. I left the school with the bouquet, boarded the plane to California. The summer in the coastal city was hot and humid, the wind carrying a hint of the ocean's scent. The weather wasn't comfortable, but I felt completely at ease. My colleagues at the company were all nice, even though I was used to being quiet and reserved. They always included me in everything. The bouquet of white roses sat in a vase and withered about 2 weeks later. I threw it away. Brian never contacted me again, but I could hear about him from other people. Have you heard about the internal struggle at Brian's company? The colleague who shared bubble tea with me placed my cup on my desk and leaned back, starting to gossip. They said he had some shares split between his father and Calvin. The two old men favored the youngest son, always wanting him to take over the company, but he outsmarted them. In a fit of rage, he even tampered with someone's car, trying to cause an accident. I couldn't help but squeeze the straw in my hand. But this Brian is no pushover either. He turned the tables on the inside mole, pretended a car accident, and caught his traitorous secretary. Now his father is in prison because of him. Calvin is under house arrest, planning to send someone abroad to explore new markets. Another colleague came over, sighing, these wealthy people, they are nothing like us common folks, fighting to the death. No brotherly love at all. I couldn't help but laugh. Common folks are just the same. I thought that no matter who it was, we wouldn't have any connections anymore. But when autumn arrived, my mother unexpectedly showed up. Between a mother and a daughter, there's no lasting grudge. Are you really planning to ignore your mom forever? She came over warmly, took my hand, and had already found a well-reputed seafood restaurant nearby. Melody, mom's treating you. We sat facing each other in a corner of the restaurant. She ordered the dishes, brought out a bottle of red wine, poured for us both, and started reminiscing about the past. After turning 6, she had left me, and my memories before that were mostly filled with her and my dad's earth-shattering arguments. Everything else was a blur. I simply could not empathize with the warm and heartfelt scenes she described between mother and daughter. So I had to ask, are you not doing well? What are you talking about? You, this child. Then why did you suddenly come to have dinner with me? She scolded me and gave me a disdainful glance. Today is your birthday. Did you really think mom forgot? My hand holding the wine glass suddenly trembled. I thought she had forgotten, but I also hoped she remembered. That's why, even after giving up any hope, I pitifully agreed to have dinner with her. Because today is my birthday. 23 years ago today, I came out of her belly covered in blood. The blood ties between us can never, ever be severed. Melody, no matter what you think, or how you blame me, you will always be a part of me that fell off. She wiped her teary eyes and clinked glasses with me. I quickly finished the red wine in my glass and peeled a shrimp for myself. The shrimp's whiskers pricked my finger a little, but I didn't feel any pain. After realizing this, a wave of drowsiness overwhelmed me, almost gluing my eyelids shut. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out, and my head fell onto the table. Yet, my senses were not completely gone. Hazed and blurry, I heard her voice, waiter, the bill please. There are still many dishes that haven't arrived. No need, cancel them. My daughter is drunk. I'll take her home first. This is your daughter. Are you sure she's drunk? Yes, look at how much we resemble each other. Can't you tell? Mom, similar faces could be proof of blood connections, or weapons you used to stab me, dripping with blood. She struggled to help me into the car. The driver started the car, and she sat in the back, gently stroking my face, over and over again. Melody can't blame mom, can she? Your sister is so inconsiderate, going to bars, offending people on the streets. Our family is no longer as powerful as before. How could she dare? People are pressuring your uncle to hand someone over. They surely can't hand over your sister, a pampered princess, can they? Perhaps the effects of the drugs had slightly faded. Though still weak all over my body, a sliver of consciousness returned. Not sure if it was from sadness or the physiological effects of the drugs. Tears streamed down my face. I struggled to utter broken sentences. Mom, why me? Why does it have to be me? You are a part of me that fell off, Melody. Shouldn't you sacrifice for my happiness too? I couldn't speak anymore. I could only faintly remember. The day I stayed with Aunt's body was also my birthday. My 12th birthday. I was terrified, shaking all over, crying and banging on the door. The wood splinters pierced my palms, blood flowing down, layer upon layer dried up on my hands. In the end, my throat couldn't produce any sound. My hands became numb from the pain. But no one came. Insane. My mom's panicked voice suddenly rang out. He's trying to kill himself. Let's stop the car first. Then came the sound of abrupt braking, a heavy thud, followed by the sirens getting closer. All this felt like it was happening through a thick fog, echoing in my ears from afar. Melody, until this one word, clear and penetrating into my ear, like sunlight breaking through the clouds, dispersing all the fog and haze. Then, my body lightened, falling into a familiar embrace. The only difference from 10 years ago was this time, someone opened the door to save me. A cold and wet sensation touched my forehead, then my eyes and the corners of my lips. I struggled to open my eyes, and saw Brian's slightly anxious gaze fixed on my face. Melody, I'm taking you to the hospital. I was burning up, as if floating lightly in the clouds. Brian dabbed a paper towel with ice water, gently wiping my burning cheeks. If you really want to just fall asleep, talk to me. The police have taken your mom away, and over at their place, they're investigating earlier financial crimes, and now suspected of kidnapping and murder. I'll get a lawyer. Try to keep them in there for as long as possible. Maybe they won't need me. This time, the people Shirley offended are not ones they can manage. I've contacted the authorities over there. Whether she'll still have her limbs intact is hard to say now. Brian had never spoken so much at once. I opened my mouth. Why are you here? His gesture of wiping my cheeks paused slightly. Today is your birthday. I was originally going to come see you after wrapping up all the work at the company, but I really wanted to see you, to spend this birthday with you, so here I am, accompanied by warm kisses landing on my face. There seemed to be tears as well. Someone was shedding tears for me. I was grateful that I came. The sound of the ambulance siren rang out, and Brian accompanied me as we got into the car. Drop by drop, the intravenous liquid flowed into my veins, clearing the effects of the drugs, and I became fully awake. After the police finished their record-taking at the hospital, everything settled. It was late into the night. Brian held my hand firmly as we went back home together. I wanted to buy you a cake, but halfway, I happened to see their car, so I chased after them all the way, and forgot about it. Brian said, looking around the quiet room. He casually took off the apron hanging on the restaurant wall and tied it on himself. Let me cook you some noodles, Melody. The long noodles boiled in the water, and after he cracked an egg and served the noodles, only then did he notice a strawberry mini cake on the dining table. Brian slightly puzzled. Where did this come from? Yesterday after work, the convenience store had a discount, so I bought one. I inserted the only candle on the cake and lit it with a match. The noodles were placed in front of me, steam rising. I folded my hands and closed my eyes. Melody, happy birthday. May your wishes come true. I still didn't feel like talking. Brian ate the cake and noodles somewhat silently, then picked up 2 cups of orange juice to sip along, somewhat absent-mindedly. Our company has landed a major project that will keep me here for the next year, Melody. If you need any help, feel free to contact me anytime. In the quiet room, he paused for a moment, then stood up. My assistant has booked me a hotel, and since your birthday has been celebrated, I'll be heading out now, he said, and the emotions in his gaze, entwined and lingering, fell on my face, with a hint of wanting to say something cryptic, seductive. Rest early, Melody. Our eyes met, colliding and intertwining in the air, emotions blending, like a soulful entwined kiss. By the time I reacted, Brian had already turned back. Caressing me, he kissed me, but it seemed like he didn't want to leave me. I didn't speak, didn't resist, just held onto his front, crumpling his tie and shirt a bit more. The room temperature rose, and Brian's breath quickened. He cupped my forehead, his voice sticky. Melody, help me undress. I slowly loosened his tie and unbuttoned his shirt one by one. When I reached the back, Brian finally couldn't take it anymore and gripped my hands. Was that intentional, Melody? I blinked, not denying. Then, it's my turn. Restlessly panting, I pressed against his hairy head, attempting to push him away, but I had no strength. Brian, he didn't hold back. I taught you, Melody. The soft, warm touch, like the wind on spring branches, in what felt like the blink of an eye, rounded the ripe cherries. Light streamed into his eyes, a gleaming wet sheen. I opened my mouth. Brother. It was as if a brilliant firework suddenly exploded in front of me. I dove down sharply, biting into his shoulder. Very good, Melody, very good. Brian ran his hand down my hair as if soothing, allowing whatever I wanted to say to flow out, without worrying about no response. When all was calm and quiet, it was already late at night. I sat at the edge of the bed, hugging my knees, hesitated for a moment, and finally said, I thought that after that day, we were done. Done with you. That's not in my consideration. Brian replied, if you don't believe me, I can say it a few more times. Melody, I love you. But why? I turned my head to look at him, as if we hadn't really spoken much. I didn't know why you would like me. It all felt like a dream, not knowing when I would wake up. Brian fell silent for a moment, then reached out and pulled me into his arms, because I saw it. After the party, when Calvin helped you tie your bow tie, you didn't look happy. Later in the middle of the party, you left early, went upstairs and cut that dress you wore. I saw it. He paused slightly here, his voice carrying a strange resonance. Calvin, that idiot. He never really understood what you wanted. In a way, you and I are alike, Melody. In the same situation, yet having the same thoughts. That night of excessive joy and passion. His words lingered as he held onto my waist. If I had been there that day, I might not have tied that bow tie for you. Melody, I would have just taken you away. I didn't want to stay in a world where I wasn't welcomed, where I forced myself to fit their standards. I just wanted to leave. Until then, I thought this idea would forever remain unknown to anyone. Is this your way of telling me a secret? I asked. Sort of, he replied. Then I should tell you one in return. Leaning against his chest, I whispered, I know, the snacks Calvin took me to get from the pantry that day were all bought by you. Those chocolates and snacks were my favorite, Brian. You always bought what I liked. So, do I now score higher than a 60? Before I could answer, he continued, but to me, you will always be a perfect score. Always. He tightened his arm around me, as if in disbelief at the sudden affirmation. Resting his chin on top of my head, Brian's fingers gently traced my slightly damp hair. Can you make me another cake for my birthday next year? The moon emerged from behind the clouds, its bright light streaming through the window, softened by the sheer curtains into a warm glow. I began to feel a bit tired, adjusted into a comfortable position in his arms, slowly closing my eyes. Okay.